Hello everyone. In this video we're going to be storing an old Emerson fan. This is a model 29646 and I picked this up from a flea market, and the lady who was selling it had it sitting outside in the rain, and I kind of felt sorry for it. I'm certainly not an expert on old fans. There's a lot of forums on the internet and groups of guys who really do some fantastic work with these old ones. So I'm hoping to get this thing cleaned up and get it running and putting it back in service. I'm not 100% sure that this fan will even run. The blades do move, but they require a lot of force to turn them. They don't turn freely, and the switch is completely corroded into place. It doesn't move at all. There's some acorns and stuff in here. The bottom of the base is completely corroded. Obviously the head wire and the cord are missing off of it. So we'll take it apart and clean it up and see how it comes out in the end. Okay? Looking forward to it. Alright, so now we're at the part where I need to remove the blade from the fan. And in order to do that, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to squirt some liquid wrench on this side. The fan blade is a right-handed thread. It's screwed onto the rotor. So in order to remove it, we need to turn it clockwise. There's two ways that you could remove the blade. One of the options is you could stick something in one of the ventilation holes here and put pressure on the rotor and then hold it in place while you remove the fan blade. The problem with this is that this area is really close to the windings on the motor, and so I'm not willing to risk damage to the windings with that method. So what we're going to do is we're going to unscrew this screw right here, which is the upper left screw of the gear housing, and take that out. And we're going to screw in a longer bolt. I believe this is a quarter 20 thread. So I'm going to screw this in here and apply pressure to the rotor with this bolt, and then hopefully the fan blade will come off. Okay, now you can. Now success. The fan blade is off. resistance test on the stator and on the speed coil to make sure that they are not completely fried. Good. Good news is that the stator and the speed coil don't appear to be fatally damaged. Alright, so what I've done now is I just wanted to test the motor and the speed coil to make sure that they were actually functioning. I have not restored them. I just cleaned them enough to hook them up and to make sure that they were functioning. So I had to solder on some leads on there, and I just got these temporarily wired. And what I've done is the motor does run, so if I plug this in, it's difficult to see because I don't have the blades hooked up, but it's running, and it's running on 3 different speeds when I operate the switch. And in order to determine that the speeds were working correctly, I used a Starrett speed gauge, and that'll tell you how many RPMs the motor is turning. So we do in fact have 3 different speeds from the switch. So now that we know that the thing's going to run, we can proceed to tear it apart again and start on the actual restoration and cleaning up on all the parts. I didn't want to get into all that until we were 100% sure that this thing was going to run. Okay, so now that we know that the speed coil and the motor are working correctly, what I've done is I've gone ahead and I took the speed coil back apart, and this time I was just focusing a little bit more on the cosmetic look of it. So I took it apart, I varnished these laminations, I put a little bit of black paint up here on the top, I cleaned up the bolts that hold it together, and then I reapplied some of the linen tape around the coil just like it had originally. And also I cleaned up these contacts on the bottom here, and now the switch is really operating. It's really operating nice. It has a real positive action when it moves between the speeds, and so it looks good and it functions good. So now I'll show you what I've done with the stator. Okay, so what I've done with the stator is we've previously confirmed that the stator was in good condition, but I wanted to clean it and I wanted to re-varnish it just to prolong its life. So I went ahead and with a soft brush I cleaned the windings on here, and I masked them off so that when I applied the insulating varnish, I didn't get the varnish where I didn't want it. I'm using this product right here called Spray-On EL600. It's a clear insulating varnish. It's a great product for this type of use. So I mentioned in one of my other videos on the Emerson motor restoration about the importance of keeping the stator warm and dry before you put this insulating varnish on there. So what I did was I let the stator sit overnight in a heating pad and just got it warmed up, not hot, but just warm and dry. So before I put this on, I made sure that everything was clean, it was a little bit warm, and it was nice and dry. And then I went ahead and I put on about 3 coats of this insulating varnish, and it came out really nice. So I think that stator is good to go at this point. Okay, so I've began ordering some of the pieces that I'm going to need to get this restoration project finished, and some of the pieces that I needed to order was this is called a head wire. This is the wire that connects the motor to the switch, and this head wire has 3 wires inside of it, and it's 3 wires that are covered with a like a black sheath. So I have that, and then we have a new electrical cord. This is a fabric covered cord, kind of like what would have been on the fan originally. I also have a vintage plug to put on there, like a Bakelite plug with a little acorn decoration. So that should give it the feel like it would have had when it was new. A couple pieces that I'm waiting on is behind the blade. There's a leather washer that helps to seal the oil from the shaft. So this leather washer right here is broken. Although I could easily cut one out myself, I went ahead and I ordered one from a gentleman named Daryl Hudson. He has a fan website, and he sells a lot of pieces for these vintage fans. And while I was placing an order with him, I also ordered 3 of these screw-in grommets. So these are actually threaded. You could replace these with the grommet from your hardware store if you wanted to, but I'm trying to keep the fan, keep these parts original, and he sells original replacements. So I'm waiting on the leather washer and 3 screw-in grommets before we could go any further with those parts. Okay, so now I'm at the part where I'm soldering the head wire onto the stator, and this head wire has 3 conductors, a green, white, and a black. So I'm using the different colors to color code the leads coming out of here, 1, 2, and 3, so I remember which one was which. So I got these soldered up, and now I'm putting some heat shrink tubing on here just to protect them a little bit better. Alright, so I've gone ahead on some of the parts and I've started stripping off some of the paint. What I've been using recently to strip off paint is this product right here called Purple Power. It's a degreaser. You could buy this stuff like at Walmart or at an auto parts place. Anyways, what I do is I just fill up a plastic bucket and I just sit the parts in there for a couple days, and the paint just comes right off. Previously, I used to use products like Citrus Strip or Aircraft Stripper or any of these, but with the new regulations on paint strippers, the fact is the new ones just don't work good. They work horribly, I mean, in my opinion, compared to how they used to work. Anyways, this product does a good job at removing paint. It does take a little bit longer, but it does a great job. So I just fill up a plastic bucket, soak the parts in there for a couple days, and this is the result. It doesn't take a lot of work on the parts after you pull them out of the bucket. Just brush them off a little bit and they're good to go. Okay, so normally when I do a restoration project, I try to reuse all the original hardware, but in this case it just wasn't possible to do that. Some of these bolts and pieces in here were so corroded that I had to bite the bullet and I had to buy some new replacements from the hardware store. What I was able to do on some of the pieces was the screws that I did save, I wanted them to have a brass finish just for a little bit more pop as far as the aesthetics were concerned. So what I've done is I heated up the screws a little bit, and then I used a brass bristled wire brush in the Dremel tool, and you spin the brush around those while they're kind of cherry red, and then it leaves a brass finish on them. So they really came out looking nice, and I did have to replace quite a bit of hardware in here though, as far as that was concerned. Okay, so one major problem that the fan has is this base. Structurally, the base is okay. I mean, there's enough material on here. It's not rusted all the way through or anything like that. But as far as the aesthetics are concerned, it's really in bad shape. The pitting on here is very deep, and even with a wire wheel, it's just not going to get any better. I had this thing soaking in evaporust for about 3 days, and this is what you're looking at after it's been soaking in evaporust for 3 days. So it's in pretty bad shape. So what I'm going to do to cosmetically make it look a little bit better is I'm going to use this paint, which I'm very fond of. It's called VHT Wrinkle Plus. I've used this in a number of my projects, and what you do is you apply about 3 medium to heavy coats on there. You apply one vertically, one horizontally, and one diagonally, and then after you do that, you can go ahead and bake this piece in the oven. And what it will do is it will give like a nice crinkle finish. And what's great about this paint is not only is it very durable, but it's good at hiding defects. So I'm going to go ahead and spray this up, and I'll pop it in the oven, and it'll have a nice finish. The bottom of this will get covered with felt, but inside here, if somebody takes the fan apart, that's going to be visible if you were to open up the fan. So even though it won't be visible outwardly, I still want it to look good in the future. If somebody ever opens up the fan, we want it to look real nice. So that's the way we're going to approach this base. Okay, so what I'm doing now is I'm removing the blades from the hub, and the way that I'm doing that is I've numbered each one of the blades and its corresponding position on the hub. And the reason why I've done that is because these blades are balanced. So when I put them back, I want to put them back in the exact same order that they came off, so that I don't screw up the balance of this blade here. So what I'm doing is I'm grinding off these rivets and just tapping them out with a punch. And the way that I'm going to go about cleaning these blades is I'm going to begin by boiling them in some vinegar. Maybe put a little bit of salt in there just to loosen up the grime that's in here. Vinegar is a good way to clean the brass. And then once they're cleaned up from the vinegar, then I'll begin with the sandpaper. I'll probably begin with maybe a 800 grit or something on here, and then work our way up so that we can polish them a little bit. We'll see how it goes once we get them out of the vinegar bath. Okay, so up to this point, I've gone ahead and I polished up the blades a little bit. You could actually read here where it says Parker on this blade here, Parker patented. These blades were originally coated with like a gold paint, and so we removed that and just buffed them out a little bit, give them a little bit of a shine. And then the same thing with the badge. Got the badge polished up a little bit. Now you can read it pretty well. So that's looking pretty good. As far as the base is concerned, I went ahead and used that VHT wrinkle paint on there just to help conceal some of the bad pitting that was on there. The paint does an excellent job at modeling the finish, so it's not so conspicuous as far as the pitting is concerned. And on these two pieces, on the hub and on the base, I put a little Bondo on here, and I have a little JB weld here and here, just to repair the body, because there were some defects in here, and on the hub this inner ring was chipped. So I went ahead and I put some JB weld on there, and when that cures, I'll file that down. It's pretty much just for cosmetics. It doesn't really serve any functional purpose, but I just wanted to look how it did before. So right now the project is coming along pretty well. Okay, so I have all the pieces primed, and in order to prime them I just used a sandable filler primer. Give them a couple coats, and before I actually paint them I'll give them a light wet sanding just to smooth out the finish a little bit. As far as the paint is concerned, I'm going to be using this Rust-Oleum product. The color of it is called Claret Wine. Traditionally these fans were black in color, and there's probably a million of these Emerson 29646 out there in black. I'm actually going to try to put this fan in my house, assuming that it comes out looking nice, and that's why I want to go with this burgundy color. I have used this color on another project and I had good luck with it. I thought it was a beautiful, rich looking color the last time I used it, so I'm hoping that lightning can strike twice and I'll have good luck with it again on this project. After I get these painted up, then we'll be clear coating them. Okay, so as I mentioned before, I covered this bottom plate with some VHT wrinkle paint to conceal the pitting that was on there. I actually made a mistake and I coated both sides with the wrinkle paint. I should have only coated the inside because I was going to be covering the other side with the fabric. So I ended up having to remove the paint from the back side. What I did was I went over to the fabric store and I found this felt, which is a nice dark green color, and it has some wool in there. It's a pretty high quality material. And the way that I applied this was, this plate is about 8 inches in diameter. So what I did was I cut a piece of felt that was 9 inches in diameter just to have enough for it to form that little lip that overlaps on there. So I sprayed the bottom of it with this Gorilla spray adhesive. Actually, there's a thing on the news where some lady actually tried to use this as a type of a hairspray and ended up having to go to the hospital. So we're not going to do that, but it does do a great job at adhering the felt to the bottom of the plate. So I sprayed that up with the Gorilla Glue, put the felt on there. Then on the inside, I took a small brush and I brushed the inside with this contact cement, and then just carefully folded down the felt inside, and that worked like a charm. So this plate came out looking pretty nice. Okay, so I wanted to put a gold stripe on the head unit here before I clear coated it, just for a little bit of a fancier look. And the way that I put that stripe on there was I used this old paint striping set. This one came from Montgomery Ward's and I bought it off of eBay for maybe $10 or so. There's new ones on the market by companies like Bugler, for example. Those are a little bit pricier. The way that this works is you choose the thickness of the pin strap that you want, and there are these little brass wheels, and you put it in the holder here. This goes in here. You fill up your bottle with paint. And then you just hold it like this, and it rolls on a nice even pin strap. The paint that I used for this was one-shot gold metallic paint, and I just held the pin strap over here and spun it around on the Lazy Susan, and there you have one pin strap. Okay, so now I'm going to begin clear coating these parts, and the clear coat that I'm going to use is a product called 2K, and this product is a two-part clear. So you have to take off this little tool in the top of the can and push it in the bottom, and that releases the hardener into here. Once you open up this can, it's only good for a short time, so you got to do all your spraying in one shot. Also, this is more poisonous than a traditional spray paint, so you want to make sure you're wearing a respirator while you're doing that. So I'm here outside, I'm going to have the respirator on. So I'm going to go ahead and clear coat these, and we'll bring you back when we're finished. Okay, so I have all the pieces clear coated, and I was really pleased with the way that the 2K product worked. Give a nice durable finish, so I think the pieces came out looking fantastic. I also received the screw-in grommets that I had ordered from Daryl Hudson, and they're beautiful, just like the originals. And I also ordered a bag of brass rivets to reattach to fan blades. You have to order these in larger quantities, but that's the size that you need to get the job done. And now we'll start putting it back together, and hopefully it's going to run. Okay, so now I'm at the point where I'm going to reattach the fan blades to the hub. And in order to make that easier, I annealed the brass rivets using a propane torch just to soften them up a little bit. And then I also had to drill out the holes in the fan blades and the hub with a number 26 drill bit, because the holes, once I painted the pieces, it wasn't exactly the same size. So in order to set these rivets, I don't have an actual rivet set, so I'm using a transfer punch, and I'll use that to get the rivet started, and then I'll just tap it flat. So we'll see how it goes. Okay, so now the fan is finished, and I feel that it came out looking pretty good. I did change the color from the original black color to this deep burgundy color, but I thought that that came out looking pretty nice. So it was a fun project to work on, and I hope that you enjoyed following along. Thank you for watching the video, and we'll see you the next time.